Hi, my name is Katie Galloway. Actually, my name is Katie Lett, but in your system, it's Katie Galloway. I just got married back in October, and for my project, I decided to do the Vatican. Technically, St. Peter's Basilica is its legal name, and I chose to do this because I know this project was originally supposed to be an in-person project until COVID came along and threw a wrench in the plans. So I wanted to pick a place that I had been able to visit. And my husband and I were lucky enough that last year when we got married in October, for our honeymoon, we were able to go to Italy, Greece, and in Croatia a little bit as well. And so we stayed in Rome most of the time, and we were able to see St. Peter's Basilica, or the commonly known the Vatican. The Vatican's specific address is, and I'm probably not going to pronounce this correctly, the Piazza San Pietro in Vatican City. And there is not really a street name. Not that you would really need it. Honestly, when you walk through Rome, it's interesting because Vatican City, of course, is its own country. It's the smallest country in the world, just over 100 acres. And you would never know that you're in Vatican City until you come to the Vatican. It's that small and it's that cohesive as you walk through Rome. But you can tell because of the architecture. It will. There's one main road that goes through Vatican City, leading up to the Vatican. It's surrounded by columns, big tall buildings, and that's about the only way that you really know that you're in the middle of Vatican City. The style of the architecture was Baroque. That was the common style of the age. But the Vatican was actually built over for a long period of time. It was over 100 years. They first started building it in, I believe it was 1506. It was 1506 to 1615. The first pope to start building it was Pope Julius II, and the last pope, the pope that the Vatican was finished under, was Pope Paul V. There were many architects during that time, many popes that ruled the area. The most famous, or at least most well-known architect is Michelangelo. He actually took over the architecture in 1546, and then Raphael also worked on the project, but Michelangelo was the most well-known. And it's interesting, while we were there, the Vatican is not simply a place of worship, although it is important to the Christian faith. Specifically, the Catholic denomination is the one who makes a pilgrimage to the Vatican. But in addition to that, there is a really incredible Vatican Museum. It has a lot of artwork, beautiful paintings that cover the ceilings, really, really incredible tapestries that hang on the walls. It's beautiful. But the museum at the very end is the Sistine Chapel, which of course is where Michelangelo has a lot of his famous paintings all over the ceiling and on the back of the wall. But it's funny because when you're in the Sistine Chapel, and I wish I would have gotten a picture of it, but they would not allow photography in the Sistine Chapel, and it's understandable. But the first third of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, everything is very detailed and very small. Michelangelo, of course, was a perfectionist, but up until the Sistine Chapel, he was a sculpturist. He did not do any kind of painting, drawing, things like that, nor did he have any interest in it. But the Pope at that time wanted to build this grandiose chapel to express to the rest of the world the power and the might of the Christian faith, and also a little bit the power and the might of himself. And so he ordered that Michelangelo come and do this painting for him. And Michelangelo was living in Florence at the time, which is not the closest thing to Rome, especially during that time. And so he told the Pope no. And the Pope did not like being told no. And so the story is that he amassed an army and was going to march into Florence and drag Michelangelo back to Rome. Florence said, "We don't want any trouble. You're going to have to go, and you're just going to have to paint." And they kicked Michelangelo out of Florence. And so he went grumbling and complaining to go paint the Sistine Chapel. And you can tell in the first third of the ceiling, everything's very small and detailed, like I said. You can tell how much time and care he put into it. And it took him, I believe, 2 to 3 years to just paint the first third of the ceiling, in which time he would not let the Pope see any of his work. And the story goes the Pope walked in one day, he's tired of not seeing it. He took one look at it and said, "That's an incredible job. You did an awesome job, but no one can tell the specifics of what is going on in the artwork from way down here." And he was right. You can tell that it's very beautiful, but you really can't tell the plot of the scenes that he painted, anything like that. Um, so I guess Michelangelo decided, well, if I don't have to do this very well, I don't want to. I didn't want to do it in the first place. And so it's funny because you go from this first third of very, very small paintings to these massive paintings for the remaining 2/3 of the ceiling. They're beautiful, but he paints these big torsos of people, and not a lot in the background, not a lot of detail, and he was just trying to get it done. And he did. He got the rest of it done in less than a year. And then as a final forget you to the Pope, he painted on the back wall one of his most famous art pieces of people being rescued out of hell to heaven. And the bottom half is supposed to be hell and its demons. The top half is supposed to be angels rescuing people out of hell. And apparently, the day before the Pope was going to unveil this beautiful Sistine Chapel and hold Mass there, Michelangelo, right before he went home, painted the devil in the corner and put the Pope's face on the devil. And when you go in there and look at it, it is the Pope's face. And it's very funny because by the time the Pope realized that, it was too late. He had already unveiled it to his congregation, and Michelangelo was back home in Florence. So that's just a bit of fun history of the Sistine Chapel. But again, the Sistine Chapel is connected to the Vatican Museum part. When you go into St. Peter's Basilica, it's a big, beautiful dome building. There's actually, I'm trying to describe the architecture. So the dome building sits in the middle, and then there are these marble columns that go around it almost in a half oval shape around them. I do have a couple pictures actually from our trip. So this just gives you an idea of the marble. This is what was kind of on the side of St. Peter's Basilica. But that is one of the big marble buildings that was there. It was beautiful. There's a lot of artwork sitting outside of it too, a lot of sculptures, things like that. This gives you an idea of what the front of it looks like. So this was my husband standing outside of St. Peter's Basilica. And then this next one is me standing outside of St. Peter's Basilica. So anyways, that just gives you an idea of what the front of it looks like. And then just those are some pictures that we took. So the Vatican is very interesting because they don't hold regular Mass services there anymore. They hold some still, usually just for special religious holidays. The Pope does address the crowd every Sunday at noon when he's there. He will go out to the front of the Vatican. The congregation, or not the congregation, but the mass of people stand outside along that main street leading up to the Vatican. He addresses them from there, and then he'll go back inside. That's only when he's in Rome, because he's not always in Rome. So when you go inside of St. Peter's Basilica, I found a really good picture because it is all, so the whole outside of it is marble. Actually, funny enough, the sack of Rome happened during the period of time when they were building the Vatican. Happened in, I believe it was 1527. Yes, 1527 was when the sack of Rome occurred. And so when they sacked the Colosseum, they stole marble and any gold that was there. They carried it off to the Vatican, and that's why the Vatican has all the marble on the outside, marble on the inside on the walls, and then the gold-plated ceilings, and there is some gold on the walls as well, along with the marble. And so this kind of gives you an idea of just its magnificence. So as you can see, the ceiling is all variations of gold art, and then the sides are marble. And then also, as you can see the crazy number of people in there. That was how it was. That's mostly how it is every single day. So I will say this about the Vatican. It was beautiful, and we loved it. But the Vatican did not feel necessarily like a sacred religious place. It did to some extent because of its magnificence, but it Felt more like a tourist attraction than anything else. It was very welcoming, very inclusive. Anybody could go in and go experience its magnificence, but it really didn't feel like it retained any of its religious authenticity. It felt like a tourist attraction. Very beautiful one, but a touristy attraction. So there is one more picture that I was going to show from the inside of the Vatican. This was another piece of art, also by Michelangelo. It's a sculpture. It's one of his most famous ones. It's called Pieta. It's a bronze statue, and it is of the Mother Mary holding Jesus. This is inside of the basilica. This is one of the more crowded areas within the basilica. And that was incredibly beautiful. And then also in the basilica, there is a staircase. You would actually miss it if you weren't looking for it. And when you go down, underneath the main sanctuary is a crypt that has the coffins of many of the former popes. So that was very interesting. That was very fun to go inside. It's just very interesting. In terms of worship experience, again, I didn't get to experience this because even though it is a sacred religious place, it was actually built there because of St. Peter. St. Peter was one of the disciples of Jesus, who was the founder of the faith, and Peter was arguably the most well-known disciple of that age. He is described as being a bit hot-headed, very very outspoken, and so because of that, he was hailed as being the leader of the disciples, at least most well-known of the disciples, and because of that, he is a very highly esteemed saint within Catholicism. Even within the Christian faith, he's very highly esteemed. And so it's built there, and its significance is that that is thought to be the burial site of St. Peter, hence the name St. Peter's Basilica. So there is a lot of religious significance, but again, we didn't really get to experience any of the worship part of it because they don't regularly hold Mass there. Now, they do hold some Mass occasionally, like I stated before, in which case there are certain rituals that are done, certain incantations, prayers, things like that that are said. There is some kneeling involved occasionally. They will pray to various saints for various things. Each saint usually corresponds with something specifically that they're praying for. But we did not get to experience any of that because, again, it was very touristy. As far as the contact information, there is a website. There is a website of St. Peter's Basilica, but again, I didn't really use the website, honestly. I did a lot of the history stuff for this assignment, but also really when we went to go visit. There is a website. It is called www.vatican.va, but again, I didn't really use this because it was actually an in-person experience for me. But that is the website if you ever needed it for anything. And I think that is just about it. We loved the Vatican. We thought it was incredibly beautiful. We were glad that we got to see it. And yeah, it was a great part of our honeymoon. Thank you so much for teaching this class. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week.